It sought to move the international community from acknowledgement to action, from recognition of historical injustice to a structured dialogue on repair.
AU Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf has appointed former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete as the AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Kikwete is set to support the continental body's efforts to address the complex political, peace and security dynamics across the region. Kaelihle Kumalo has more.
The AU is confident that Kikwete will make a significant contribution to support countries in the region in addressing prevailing challenges and advance durable peace. The AU adds that this is a vital engagement given the strategic importance of the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea for the international trade and the broader stability of the African continent. The AU High Representative will further work with the regional blocs such as IGAD, EAC, the League of Arab States and other structures.
Sudan's armed forces have been accused of targeting the largest hospital in East Darfur on the first day of Eid al-Fitr. The BBC's Richard Cargo has more.
Researchers at Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab in the US say satellite images reveal 3 separate strikes on El Dain Teaching Hospital in East Darfur. They say the damage suggests a deliberate aerial attack on a facility located in an area controlled by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Government buildings and a police station nearby were not affected, leading researchers to conclude that the hospital was specifically targeted. Sudan's military has denied responsibility. Both sides in Sudan's conflict have faced accusations of attacking civilian sites, acts that could amount to war crimes.
The CRL Rights Commission has reaffirmed its commitment to protecting South Africa's cultural, religious and linguistic communities. The South African Church Defenders have filed papers in the High Court in Johannesburg seeking to interdict the Commission's activities while also calling for the removal of its chairperson, Togo Mkhwanazi-Xaluva, for alleged poor performance. Legal opinions from Parliament maintain that the Commission's actions fall within its constitutional mandate. Briefing the media in Johannesburg, Mkhwanazi-Xaluva has reiterated the Commission will continue its work unless instructed otherwise by a court of law.
The Constitution doesn't allow you to abuse other people, doesn't allow you to deceive people, doesn't allow you to violate other people's rights. There's nothing you can lean on in the Constitution of this country that allows you to violate people. It's not a free for all in this country, and we're saying it's never going to be a free for all.
An Iranian military spokesperson, Ibrahim Zolfagri, has accused the United States of negotiating with itself over the conflict in the Middle East amid uncertainty over the prospects of meaningful peace talks. President Donald Trump has insisted his administration is talking to the right people in Iran and that they badly want a deal to end the war. The BBC's Joanne Keane has the details.
In a video message broadcast on Iranian media, the spokesman doesn't mention the United States or President Trump, but talks about the self-proclaimed global superpower and warns someone like us will never come to terms with someone like you. The statement comes amid reports that a 15-point peace plan for reaching a ceasefire has been sent to Iran by the United States. It's said to include the dismantling of Iran's nuclear facilities in exchange for the lifting of sanctions, but there's been no confirmation of this. Amid the uncertainty, the conflict continues and oil prices remain volatile.
Recapping the top story this hour, the UN General Assembly in New York will today consider a draft resolution that would unequivocally condemn the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the transatlantic slave trade as the most inhumane and enduring injustice against humanity. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Bafana is scrambling to secure warm-up matches ahead of the FIFA World Cup. And Rook Knapp and Brendan Tays are looking forward to a big payday after their weekend fight. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Business, trade, and investment opportunities that put the continent first. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Benin. Good afternoon, Zanzibar, Mali, Sudan, Libya. Good afternoon to you, Liberia. Good afternoon, Seychelles. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to it. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. It is Wednesday, the 25th of March, certainly a day that we as Channel Africa have been anticipating for quite a long time. And guess what? It's done. It's dusted. The very first ever Africa Matters Summit was held today, and we'll be talking to our business manager, Mr. Dixon Ngula, a little bit later on today to find out what some of the outcomes were of that summit. It really was absolutely amazing. Also coming up this hour, we'll focus on negotiations that have been concluded between Kenya and China on a trade agreement. They, as in Kenya, have granted China 98% of its export products to be given a duty-free access, and that obviously to the world's largest market. Do stay connected to Africa as well as the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch or listen anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za. We are on the Channel Africa mobile app and on SABC Plus, or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. You can also catch us on social media at Channel Africa on Facebook and Channel Africa One on all other platforms. Channel Africa, first with the African story globally.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV audio bouquet. Channel 802. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon with Kenya having concluded negotiations on a trade agreement with China. This follows a preliminary deal that was announced 2 months ago that would allow the East African nation duty-free access to the Chinese market. The agreement is expected to grant East African nations duty-free access to up to 98% of their export products, opening significant opportunities in one of the world's largest markets. Meanwhile, Kenya is also grappling with fuel shortages as the ongoing Iran conflict disrupts global oil supply. For more on this, we're joined on the line by an economist based in Kenya, Francis Sang. A very good afternoon to you, Francis. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, Thami. Glad to be here once more.
And let's start first with an understanding of how significant this deal is. How significant, how important is duty-free access to the Chinese market for the country's economy? And what does this deal signal about Kenya's shifting trade strategy as well as its deepening ties with China?
Okay, the main significance of this trade, you look at what you are taking to China and you look at what China gets from Kenya. Because as usual, China is the big brother in the negotiation, so the benefits have to be tilted in their favor. But Kenya also gains, because as you have said, it opens up 98% of the Kenyan export products duty-free into China. And Kenya gains significantly through development, infrastructure development, although China also gains because it secures imports. It secures agricultural imports to China and key products which Kenya produces into China. So what will happen, it opens up the market, which will benefit Kenya's main backbone activity, which is agriculture, which will boost agriculture in the economy, and also improve on the balance of trade, in which, as of now, Kenya has a very big deficit in that balance.
The rhetoric, Francis, when it comes to Africa-China relations, and the question that many ask is, are these deals mutually beneficial? Because a lot of the time it looks like it's slanted towards Africa's side, and that China doesn't benefit much. How would you categorize this particular deal? Does it benefit both nations?
Yes, this deal is mutually beneficial, and I think I believe from the deal, China gains more than what Kenya is gaining from this deal. Because number one, it's strategic to China because it increases their influence in Africa, which is a key hub in Africa, both economic and political. It opens the market for China, especially the industrial market for China. Because in this deal, you'll see that China has already secured a special economic zone in Kilifi, which is worth 19.4 billion Kenya shillings. And also manufacturing imports. Kenya currently imports products like cement and other products from China. It also strengthens the Chinese, as I had said earlier, the political and geopolitical influence. And Kenya gains by the improved infrastructure development. But you see in this infrastructure development, who really gains? It's the Chinese contractors who will develop this infrastructure, which means they'll be paid. It's the Chinese banks that will finance the development of this infrastructure, which means that they've generated future cash flows from Kenya when they'll be paid, and it is their contractors who are paid. So there is much for China to gain in this agreement, although Kenya is also gaining.
So when we look at Kenya, are Kenyan producers competitive enough to take full advantage of the Chinese market? And which would you highlight as the export sectors that stand to benefit the most from this 98% duty-free access?
Okay, yes, Kenya stands to benefit. Kenya has the potential, especially in agriculture. And of late, the prices of our major export commodities like tea are dwindling in the international market. And by securing this deal, this will be able to stabilize the supply of tea and also motivate production to the farmers, because Kenya produces tea through two main. We have factories that are big multinationals that produce. Then we have outgrowers, who are individuals who plant tea. Apart from that, Kenya has other exports like coffee, avocados, and macadamia nuts to the Chinese, which will go to the Chinese market. For example, in the nuts is another industry, agricultural sector in Kenya that has been going down for a while, whereby the prices of these nuts have been going down. Now opening up a market in China for these nuts like macadamia nuts. We produce cashew nuts in the coastal regions, although not as much as what Tanzania produces. This will be able to open up the market, especially in the agricultural sector. Also in the mining sector, Kenya exports minerals to China, but I believe the most significant impact will be on the agricultural sector.
Is there not a danger, Francis, that Kenya might become too dependent on China and just too reliant on them as an export destination?
Yes, there is that danger. Unfortunately, I don't know the particulars of the deal. If the deal is exclusive, is mutually exclusive to Kenya and China, looking out other countries in some capacities, so there are some limits of trade. But I believe what the Kenyan government should do is to look for such deals with other partners. For example, I know Kenya there is currently a discussion between Kenya and USA to enter into a bilateral deal, a similar one to the one between Kenya and China. But as you have said, it's correct. It brings too much dependence on China. And as I had said earlier, it looks like there's an agreement in place, but it's usually the big brother who calls the shots in such transactions. That's why I insist that China is set to benefit more than Kenya in this deal.
So with that established, how then does Kenya change the playing field? How does Kenya change its policies, or what needs to happen domestically within Kenya for them to actually be on not equal footing, because that's going to take a lot for them to be on equal footing with China right now, but at least to be more competitive and not be overly reliant on the country?
The only way Kenya can step up its game, it's through diversification and also through the help of the government and private sector partnerships. We look at the potential, and Kenya has a lot of potential and opportunities locally, apart from the so-called agriculture and tourism. But even if you look at agriculture, there's still many potential opportunities that are yet to be tapped into or unlocked. So Kenya should look into diversify into such areas and also look into trade, especially regional trade with our neighboring countries in Africa and other countries also in Africa at large, because trade between, it's safer to have strong relationship with your neighboring countries, and in terms of trade, see what they don't have, see what you have, so that you don't heavily depend on a brother who's a first world country in Asia.
I'd like us, Francis, to shift gears for a moment and look at the fuel shortages in the country. How has the regulator's decision to freeze the pump prices contributed to the shortages that the country is currently experiencing?
Okay, the information that...
Are you still with us, Francis? All right, sounds like we have lost Francis Sang. He's an economist based in...
Yes.
Okay, looks like we've got you back. Okay, please do go ahead. You were starting off to say the information that you've got, and I lost you there.
Okay, my apologies. The information that we have is that there are some quotas that are saying that we've received enough fuel for the next 21 days. There are some quotas that are saying that the fuel shipments that we've received were at a higher price because of what's happening in Iran, the fight in the Gulf. Because what happens, there's an increase in maritime insurance when there's such a risk. But the government it's really insisting that the prices should not go high through the EPRA, which is the government agency that prices energy. But now the oil marketers are the ones who are saying that the price should go high to also help them meet the cost that they have incurred in importing this fuel. So it's a situation that we are in, but most likely in the coming month, the price of fuel is going to come up because the fuel price usually changes on the 15th of every month. But in the current month, I think the government will stamp its foot and the prices will remain. In terms of shortage, currently we haven't experienced a shortage as was expected, but maybe in the long term, we'll expect shortages and really an inflation, especially in the energy sector, which will influence all the other sectors going forward into the future if the war continues.
All right, Mr. Francis Sang, thank you so much for taking us through the current state of affairs in Kenya, this new agreement with China, as well as the opportunities that exist for the country. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
You're welcome, and thank you too.
Thank you, sir. That's Francis Sang. He's an economist based in Kenya. He takes us to exactly 20 minutes after 4.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
I Show Speed, often called Speed, who is a popular American YouTuber and live streamer known for his high-energy personality, loud reactions, and unpredictable humor. He visited Ethiopia, and he was shocked what he found out actually when he got to Ethiopia. He got to find out that, they don't use the Gregorian calendar. That is, we are in 2026 right now. And he got to find out they are in 2018.
2018? Nah, you trolling me. It's 2026. No. It ain't 2026? Wait, hold on. Wait, we in the past? Ronaldo is still in Real Madrid. Everything is in the past here.
Oh man, how shocked the Speed was. He went back in time.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It has gone exactly 21 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Oh, what a day it has been. We have, as Channel Africa, been talking about this for quite a long time. We've brought you experts. We've brought you some of the facilitators to talk about what's next for Channel Africa. And today we really saw what is next. But not only that, we saw what is possible for us as a channel, what's possible for us as Africa. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the inaugural Africa Matters One Day Summit. It was held on this very day. The theme this year was financing Africa's recovery. It's just come to an end, and it was brought to you in partnership with Wits Business School, and there were a diversity of experts, policymakers, as well as researchers, all advocating for stronger, more innovative financing solutions in order to enable Africa to not only recover economically, but also to thrive amid the growing challenges that are posed by climate change. Honored this afternoon to have our very own business manager, Channel Africa's business manager, with us in the studio, Mr. Tixin Ngula. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hello.
And how quickly did you get here? Because we were at Wits Business School all of this morning, and I thought maybe you'd be joining us telephonically. No, but you thought you'll come here and be here with us. Why was this so important for you?
No, I thought, technology is good, and we appreciate it. But I also felt that it's important I come in person, and so that we can share, on the results of today without interruptions or disruptions. So I'm here and I'm ready to chat through it all.
Great. Well, let's get straight into it. As far as the objectives of what Africa Summit was supposed to achieve, maybe can you take us through that? And upon reflection of the conversations and the discussions that were had today, do you believe that those objectives were met?
I think so. I think you must remember that this was a foundation for us. The communique that was leaving our desks at all times going out to the world about this particular summit today was lamenting the issues around fragmented policy frameworks on the African continent. Secondly, the misconceptions around investment risks on our continent, which are things that we often have to dispel ourselves. And I think thirdly, it was important that we come out and really advocate for unity on this continent about how we approach matters that affect us. So we've spoken at length about, stats as to what it means to be the ones that are suffering the most out of climate change, and yet we are the least contributors, right? But I'm proud that the framing of conversation today wasn't all about complaining how we are treated by other regions, etc., etc. Of course, that's a fact, But the real objective of today was to say we are taking our own destiny into our own hands, and we must look at the instruments that we have where funding and financing is concerned and say how can we calibrate those to ensure that we arrive at the table to speak value for value deals with international finance institutions, and I think that we achieved that. We set a bar very high in terms of the panels that were there, the insights that came out of these discussions today. I'm really, really proud on behalf of Channel Africa in particular, and in general the SABC.
And what would you highlight as some of the key outcomes that really stuck for you, and you thought, this is something that we can actually stand on as a pivot, a foundation that we can build on? Is there anything that really just stood out particularly for you?
I thought that I liked the fact that you guys as facilitators really pressed our panelists to not come and talk through old cliches, but to really come up with solutions. You had private banks there. There was a fair representation of policymakers. And all of these people really had clear views as to what should happen. And of course, in an environment like that, you are going to have diametrically opposed views from time to time. But the importance of having all of them in one room and then narrowing it down to solutions and steps we must take forward so that we can measure ourselves. For me, that was a highlight. The fact that WBS will record these and we will all have a space to go back to and say, these were the outcomes, and are we actually marching in step with those outcomes and the deliberations and the recommendations of those discussions? So that for me was important.
And I like the fact that you highlight the fact that there were some diametrically opposed views, because that's the nature of life. And all of those were represented there this afternoon. So some really robust, conversations were taking place. But also for me, what stood out is the opportunity that exists when we look at the illicit financial flows that actually leave the continent, but could then be reinvested back into climate change, for example, the trillions that are there when it comes to pension funds. But then you ask, do you want to use pension funds, for that type of development? Because that's, money of the vulnerable. So all of those really important debates were coming up. But what I really enjoyed is the fact that there was a feeling that it is possible and it can be done. And we didn't leave there defeated. A really, really strong platform for us to move from.
I was just going to add, Thami, that blended finance is exactly about that. That we've got to look at the issue of carbon credits. We've got to look at other solutions. How do DFIs, development financiers, in this continent of ours, must begin to play a developmental role and stop acting like commercial banks. That's one of the comments that actually came up. But we also experience it as businesses, that our DFIs, even the credit regimes, are very stringent. The risk assessments are not really in line with what DFIs should be doing. And I also want to say that for every proposition you're going to table for financing, there's always going to be a question of equity or owner contribution, etc. Those discussions came up. How do you say to people who've been oppressed for so long, have had to suffer the way that they have, that now they must arrive at the table with equity? Okay, our equity is that we're the youngest population on the continent, and we have rare earths, by the way, which everybody wants, and we should speak with one voice. I'm glad that the issue of unity came up here. We have to speak with one voice as the African continent, so that when we talk to other regions, Europe, the Americas, etc., at least our voice is louder, and we can hold on to the stuff that they know they want, and say no. If you want to come and play, you're going to play according to our own rules.
And that was so important. And at some points I felt that it was to be an overhaul, because everything and the entire premise from which we move as a continent has been based on colonial rules. So how have those very same rules been applied to capital, and what there needs to change? Because the very foundation needs to change of how we relate to capital, and how capital is financed, and how we as Africans are part of that entire equation. So it really just leaves a lot to be discussed. So we've spoken about the report that's going to come out from Wits Business School. Right. Who do you intend to be the audience for that, and what do you hope that document will do?
So some of these, you would know this studying, right, that academic reports stay with institutions, but this institution agreed to partner with a public broadcaster, okay, and the main reason for us ensuring that we stream this, we take it out to the public, was to reach audiences far and wide. That's what these types of engagements are meant to do, Thami. It's to say there's the four walls of the auditorium where the discussion is taking place. You plug in Channel Africa's ecosystem there. That conversation now can reach cities across the continent. But we must also be able to say, how do we talk to the media partners we have on the continent to ensure that those public sector broadcasters take the message to the villages, and we think that using our communication platforms, that has a multiplier effect, and that's what we bring to the table.
I know we've just finished the very first one, but I'm going to ask you, when is the next one?
When is the next one?
Yes, and what are we talking about?
I don't know yet what we're talking about, but what I can say to you is that Africa Matters, the one that happened today, is a foundation for it's always going to happen annually. We'll do one or two a year, all right? And we haven't decided on the subject matter of the next one, but this particular one, because it's a child born today, right? And there are outcomes out of it. And that we need to go back to these discussions. That theme will proceed. So there will be multiple themes. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a project that's going to give birth to multiple projects, all under the same Africa Matters umbrella.
I really like that, because that will already distinguish us from being a talk shop.
Yeah.
because the outcomes that come out from this particular summit will then inform where we're taking the discussion next. Are we going to just elevate it? Let's change gears. And so it's very robust and it's dynamic and it's living, just like us as Africa. Mr. Tixungula, thank you so much for coming through. And you go home and you have yourself a good rest.
I'm going to sleep until April.
No, there's just a few more days left. That's our business manager there, Mr. Tixungula. The aftermath of a really successful Africa Summit. It takes us to exactly 4:32 Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk, where Nosipho Zuma is standing by with your latest market indicators.
No matter where you are, Channel Africa is always with you. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. In your business indicators, the SAWA, $1 is trading at 16 Rand 97 in South Africa. In Botswana is trading at 13 Pula 51. In Namibia, it is trading at 16 Namibian dollars 97. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 19 kwacha 49 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 157 Biro 1. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 759. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shilling 855. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 366. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 52 Egyptian pound 17. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 92. In Algeria, it is trading at 131 dinar 27. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 9 dirham 36. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,256 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,360 and platinum at $1,879 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $103.44 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, a very good afternoon to you, Figile Lingwate.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Thami. Let's kick off with football news. Bafana head coach Hugo Broos would have preferred more international friendlies against quality opposition ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the Americas in June. But securing big teams come at a huge cost. Football powerhouses Brazil and Argentina were willing to travel to South Africa for warm-up matches, but both demanded exorbitant match fees of $5 million. With two of Bafana's FIFA World Cup group opponents already confirmed, South Africa want to secure warm-up matches against teams who play a similar style of football. Bruce says the ideal scenario will be to play friendlies against three teams that are similar to Bafana's Group A counterparts.
With two of Bafana's FIFA World Cup group opponents already confirmed, South Africa want to secure warm-up matches against teams who play a similar style of football. Bafana opened their World Cup campaign against co-hosts Mexico in the opening match of the spectacle. They will then face the eventual winners of the UEFA playoffs, comprising of Denmark, the Czech Republic, Republic of Ireland, and North Macedonia. South Africa's final group match will be against South Korea. Bruce says the ideal scenario will be to play friendlies against three teams that are similar to Bafana's Group A counterparts.
Bafana are securing two friendlies against Panama, and that did not come cheap. And Hugo Broos is crossing his fingers that the cash-strapped Basafa will be able to secure opposition for more friendlies in May.
So Panama is not coming free either. You have to pay also. They are coming, yes, but not only the trip or whatever, no. You have to pay a sum of money to come here and to play 2 games. So SAFA did a big effort to have Panama. So now we will see what we can get, or an Asian team or a European team for May. So I know for European teams it's more easy because the money is there. We don't have that money.
And Football Supporters Europe, the FSE, has lodged a formal complaint against FIFA over what it calls excessive ticket prices for this summer's World Cup. Alongside Euro consumers, the group accused football's governing body of abusing its monopoly position in setting costs. FIFA had already introduced a limited number of $60 tickets for all 104 matches after criticism of pricing structure. But supporters are demanding more transparency and an end to dynamic pricing. FSE says fans should receive at least 48 hours notice of ticket availability and clarity on seat categories before sales open in April. And on to rugby news, South African props are the flavour of the month on the transfer market. Double Rugby World Cup winning tight head prop Frans Malherbe has emerged as a top target for French top 14 giants La Rochelle. Based on available reports, there are no specific public transfer fees disclosed for Springbok tight head prop. Malherbe has been sidelined since March last year and missed the entirety of the Springboks international season 2025. Now, in boxing news, what makes the Rogue Nab Brendan Tays trilogy unique is the profound mutual respect between the two warriors, with this bout serving as a sole survivor final and is expected to be a fan-friendly war. When the two first met in 2019, Tays claimed victory via a stoppage, but in the second match-up, the fight went the distance and Nab had his hand raised. Both men are now determined to walk away with a record-breaking prize money pot of $24,000 and put a definitive end to this epic chapter of South African boxing.
Well, I think both of us bring, quite a lot to the sport. We're not one-dimensional, we're both very versatile, so it really depends on the night. That's the whole point of having an arsenal of tools and things up your sleeve that, if need be, you can use them in the fight. So it really does depend on how the fight goes, but either way.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It has gone exactly 4:39 Central African time. Thank you to Nosipho Zuma and Figile Lingwati. We turn our focus now to a national indaba on pro-poor human rights budgeting. It is currently underway at the Wits School of Governance in Johannesburg, South Africa. Hosted by the school together with the South African Human Rights Commission and the Chartered Institute for Business Accountants, the indaba seeks to advance meaningful dialogue on how fiscal policy and public spending can better support the realization of socio-economic rights in South Africa. It aims to strengthen dialogue and collaboration between government institutions, civil society organizations, academia, and finance professionals on the role of budgeting in advancing human rights. MEC for Finance and Economic Development in Gauteng, Lebohang Maile, was the keynote speaker.
It's very important because services that have to do with the livelihood and sustainability of the people should not be a privilege but a right, and a democratic government has got the responsibility to ensure that we don't leave anything to chance. We are deliberate and we are conscious and consistent in how we act at the policy level, programs level, and in terms of allocating resources. Because if we take it for granted, a lot of things can fall through the cracks and we can have a lot of vulnerable people, especially children and women, people living with disability, being subjected to unending poverty.
Just the importance of aligning budget to human rights. Why is that important?
To ensure that you deal with issues of livelihood in a sustainable way. You don't leave anything to chance, but you also ensure that everything that you do, people and the interests, including the rights of the people, are at the center.
What is it that you are hoping the outcome of this budget is? How will it benefit the people at grassroots level?
Well, people will receive services like education, like health. Roads must be fixed, the economy must be fixed, people must get jobs, so it must respond directly.
Just last, MEC, just to sidetrack a bit, we are also hosting an event on climate change. It's called Africa Matters as Channel Africa. Just how much of an impact is climate change having on the province, on the country, on the continent?
Well, we have seen it has been having a devastating effect. The weather patterns have not been predictable. We've seen floods and all different kind of devastation that has been created by climate change, and that's why it's something that we must accept that it's there and understand what are the things that we have to do as human beings, working with other nations to prevent further devastation.
That was the MEC for Finance and Economic Development in Gauteng, Lebohang Maile, speaking there with our reporter Nhlanhla Mahlangu. Takes us to exactly 43 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus to insurance on the African continent. As insurance businesses across Africa continue to mature, the sector is evolving beyond basic digitization towards advanced applications of artificial intelligence and hyper-personalization, while also maintaining that human empathy that is so crucial during the claims process. According to Pravin Kalpage, CEO of Hollard International, East and West Africa have emerged as benchmarks for digital adoption, with markets rapidly leapfrogging the traditional insurance models. He joins us on the line this afternoon. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Kalpage. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Hi, Thami. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So as insurance move from basic digitization to the more sophisticated technologies like artificial intelligence, for example, what are the challenges you believe we face in ensuring adoption across diverse markets?
So I think, Thami, I think that's a really important question, and I think there are a few factors at play. I think in markets where there is advanced digital adoption, like a Kenya or a Ghana, I think you will see a different journey. And in other markets where there is less digital adoption, where customers are less comfortable interacting with insurers digitally, I think there's a whole piece around consumer awareness and getting them up to speed and education in terms of what this means for their future.
And how do East and West African markets compare to Southern Africa in terms of that digital readiness and the willingness to adopt AI-driven insurance solutions? You mentioned Kenya and Ghana there.
Yes, Thami. So I think Kenya has leapfrogged Southern Africa in terms of using a mobile phone for banking and transactions by quite a significant mile. So I think with the advent of M-Pesa, it's very natural for people across all income segments to use a phone to transfer money to anyone across the country and across the region. So I think that has given people confidence to use this not just for transactions, but for other uses. And for example, there is the ability now for traders, for example, to take a loan in the morning for the working capital that they require for the day, and at the end of the day, pay that loan off. And it might be as small as 50 shillings or 100 shillings. And then as you build up a credit worthiness, the provider will then increase what amount that they're willing to loan you. So I think then extending that to insurance becomes much easier compared to South Africa, where we're still across the full spectrum of income segments. We're not really that comfortable in terms of using a phone.
And why do you believe there is such a chasm? Why is there such a difference in, openness to technology if you look at the difference between East and West Africa and Southern Africa?
I think there are a few factors. One is I think there was a mobile network operator who saw an opportunity to help low-income or the general population transfer money from the city to rural areas, which they were doing using public transport. They saw an opportunity and they went into that opportunity and they managed to build trust over a period of time. And I think that was not a problem that necessarily exists in a place like South Africa. So I think that's the one side of it. Secondly, I think from a regulatory point of view, regulators in some of the other markets in the rest of Africa are open to experimenting to some innovation and creating sandboxes in which banks, insurers can play with some of these ideas within a less regulated environment until it comes to scale. And then obviously you need to put the safeguards around to make sure that consumers don't get taken advantage of. And I think given some of the legacy that exists in a place like South Africa, it might be a bit more challenging for regulators to engage with that kind of innovation.
Does the area of criminality or the criminal mind have anything to do with that? Issues of trust, perhaps?
I think you've got issues of trust anywhere. And I think you always have to put controls and safeguards around it. But I think if that becomes a limiting factor for innovation, then I think that could be a lost opportunity. And I think that's why if you can create sandboxes, as they call them, for some of these pilots, some of these innovations, and then as they develop, if they are successful, then put the controls in place to ensure that we can manage things like fraud and the risks around that, it would be quite beneficial.
So I do hear you there saying innovation first, and then you put all of those, controls in place. But how are insurance companies such as yourselves balancing the use of AI and that hyper-personalization with that human empathy that's required during the claims process? Because when one is claiming, that's the point of your vulnerability. And oftentimes, as a human being, you want to talk to another human being and not some bot.
That's absolutely valid, Thami. And I think that's a really important point for us to think about as we think about using AI, digitalization, automation as part of our processes. And the way we see it in insurance, there is a functional journey and then there is an emotional journey, as you've rightly pointed out. The functional journey is in terms of things like underwriting, things like policy maintenance, things like even deciding whether a claim should be paid or not. And I think you can really use digitalization, automation, and AI to make sure that those parts of the value chain are absolutely as efficient as possible. Because at the end of the day, that will mean speed, efficiency, and accuracy in terms of the customer as well, and will improve customer satisfaction. Then there is the emotional journey in terms of claims in particular, the claims event itself and how you handle that, and any complaints or queries that a customer might have. And you need to ensure that there are humans who are able to engage at those periods of time. So we see automation and AI as an opportunity to free up the capacity of humans to be able to focus on those events that require the empathy, require the relationship. So the principle is automate the routine and humanize the complexity.
Well said and packaged there at the end, Mr. Pravin Kalpage. Thank you so much for your time and just really bring us up to date with what is happening on the African continent as far as AI and insurance is concerned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Thami, and thank you for your time.
It's been awesome. That's Mr. Pravin Kalpage, who's the CEO of Hollard International. He takes us to exactly 4:51.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet, Channel 628. No matter where you are, Channel Africa is always with you. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:51. She's also made her way back from Wits Business School and back with us here in the studio as she prepares for Vous d'Afrique. Bonjour, Madame
Bonjour à
Joël.
toi, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Alors aujourd'hui sur Channel Africa, nous parlerons notamment des opérations de sécurité renforcées qui ont été déclenchées dans la province du Haut-Katanga en République démocratique du Congo dû à l'apparition d'un nouveau mouvement armé. Et aussi, nous nous pencherons sur la tournée du vice-président chinois dans 3 pays africains pour consolider notamment les relations économiques. Et en deuxième partie, ce sera le sport avec Jolino Sungu. Merci de rester connecté. Merci Thami.
Merci beaucoup. That's Joël. She joins us at the top of the hour.
Téléchargez l'application Channel Africa sur votre Play Store ou Apple Store afin de pouvoir suivre toutes nos émissions en direct de là où vous vous trouvez. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Channel Africa, your voice, your sound, and your home. Stay logged right here. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:52 Central African time. Let's round off our time together this afternoon by looking at market performance. It remains significantly impacted by the escalating Middle East tensions, and investors are navigating high volatility and the surging energy prices. Let's focus more on this as well as other market developments. And for this conversation, we're joined by Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at Absa Investment. Very good afternoon to you, Lindile. Good to have you with us.
Good afternoon, Thami, and afternoon to the listeners as well.
So the impact of the Middle East tensions continue to be reflected on market performance. What is the latest on this, and how are markets assessing it?
Yeah, so Thami, I think markets are seeing a bit of hope now, with hope that there will be a escalation in tensions following the US proposing a ceasefire. It has reflected in today's performance with global markets trading higher, so seeing a bit of optimism there that we can come to a resolution. Locally, the oil share is also in the green, being driven by financials and resources. Commodities, particularly your likes of your gold, have been under a bit of pressure. They're also seeing a bit of relief, with the exception of oil, of course, that had seen significant spikes on the back of these tensions. Today, it's down about 4% so far today. Looking at the rand, that also has seen a bit of volatility, trading slightly below 17 rand to the dollar today, but certainly giving back the gains that we'd seen from the start of the year.
Investment holding company Remgro Limited, they released their interim results for the 6 months ended December 2025. What stood out for you from those results?
Yeah, so certainly worth highlighting that it was a solid set of results. So headline earnings grew by about 38%. Also seeing that being reflected within the operational performance, so improvements across most of their operations and lower finance costs. And we did see that this earnings growth was mainly driven by Mediclinic, Rainbow Chicken, your likes of your Heineken beverages as well. The company also mentioning a once-off uplift that they got from Total Energies as well. So those were some of the improvements from an operational point of view. Of course, you're still seeing RCL Foods continuing to struggle on the back of their sugar division. Also quite good to see that dividends did increase, so dividends increasing by about 80%. And then the company also mentioning some of the risks that they are seeing from the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, particularly with the exposure that they have via Mediclinic in the United Arab estimates from that perspective. And then also seeing markets reacting positively to the news so far today, so up about 1.3%. But I think it was in line with what markets had anticipated as well.
So looking ahead, Lindile, what other economic releases are investors watching for this week?
So I think the most important one continues to be the progression within these tensions that we are seeing from the geopolitical front, and whether or not we can actually come to a potential ceasefire. And then what's important from the local perspective will be that the South African Reserve Bank is convening tomorrow to make a decision on the interest rates. Markets for now are not expecting a rate cut at tomorrow's meeting. Of course, there's been some inflationary risks to the upside, particularly with your spike in your oil prices, and that's reflected in petrol prices. And then also looking at the global releases are expecting flash PMIs, more like your economic activity indicators from the various developed economies. And then also expecting inflation numbers from the UK as well. So yeah, still quite a busy week from a release perspective.
Oh, certainly. Lindile Malchas, always a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Have yourself a great one.
Pleasure to be on the show. Cheers.
Thank you. That's Lindile Malchas. He is investment strategist.
Cheers.
Cheers. Have a good one at Absa Investments. He takes us to exactly 4:57 Central African time. And that's how we come to the end of it today. It's been a really busy one. And thank you for having stayed with us as Channel Africa. As you know, from early morning, we were broadcasting from the Wits Business School, where we were hosting Africa Matters. A lot of our on-air personalities having been there and broadcasting you live. And I'm sure you heard the texture of the vibe at the back and the chitter, the chatter. And it really was a worthwhile experience. If you have missed it, I think you'll be able to find it as well on SABC Plus, because they were streaming it as well. So just type in Africa Summit, or rather Africa Matters, Channel Africa, and see what comes out of that. Some really, important conversations that were had today, and I wouldn't want you to miss out on any of those. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire Africa in Business team, give yourself a splendid afternoon further. Reste connecté as Vodafrique comes up in just a minute.
Channel Africa, your voice, your sound, and your home. Stay logged right here. Business, trade, and investment opportunities that put the continent first. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni.